My girlfriend cheated with my best friend in our own apartment. I vanished for 5 years, but now she's begging because I have a son I never knew about, and Josh just found out he's sterile. I'm 34 years old. I work in project management for a tech company, and I need to tell this story because basically I've spent 5 years trying to process the worst betrayal of my life, and now, it turns out I have a 5-year-old son. I didn't even know existed. I mean, how do you process something like that? Honestly, I still don't know. But here I am, engaged to the most incredible woman in the world and fighting in courts for the right to know a kid who shares my DNA but sees me as a complete stranger. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I was 29 and thought my life was going pretty well, you know, I had a decent job, lived with my best friend Josh in a downtown apartment, and had been with my girlfriend Sarah for almost 3 years, who was basically my favorite person in the world, or so I thought. The thing is, I trusted Josh like nobody else. Like the brother I never had. We'd known each other since college and had been through everything together. The good, the bad, the horrible, everything. And Sarah, well, Sarah was that person I thought I was going to marry someday. I was already starting to look at rings online and everything, planning how to propose to her in a special way because she always said she hated cliché things. We lived in separate worlds, but it worked. She had her apartment about 20 minutes from mine, and I shared rent with Josh because, honestly, we were both a mess with finances and splitting costs made sense. Everything seemed normal, completely normal, until one day Derek, another friend from the group, sent me a screenshot that basically blew my life into 1,000 pieces. It was a message, well, several messages actually, between Sarah and a friend of hers, and I'm not going to repeat exactly what they said because my stomach still hurts when I think about it. But basically, Sarah was telling her friend about how she'd been hooking up with Josh for months. Months. In our own apartment when I wasn't there. She described details, laughed about the situation, said things like how exciting it was, risking me discovering them, like as if the whole thing was a game to her. Derek sent me that with a simple message that said, "Bro, thought you needed to know this. My girlfriend's sister is friends with Sarah and sent me this because she thought it was the right thing to do." And I just sat there in my office looking at my phone screen thinking, this can't be real. It has to be a mistake. It has to be a bad joke or something. Because there was no way the two people I trusted most in the world were doing this to me. But it was real. Completely real. And I left the office without saying anything to anyone, got in my car and drove to the apartment with my hands shaking so much I almost went out of my lane like 3 times. I got there around 3 in the afternoon, which was weird because normally I didn't come back until 6. And I opened the door as quietly as possible because part of me, the masochistic part I guess, needed to see it with my own eyes. And there they were. I could hear noises coming from Josh's room, and I walked down that hallway feeling like my legs were made of lead, opened the door without knocking, and there they were in my best friend's bed, my girlfriend and him. And the look on their faces when they saw me was almost comical. Almost, if it weren't for the fact that I felt like they were ripping my heart out of my chest in that moment. Sarah tried to cover herself with the sheet and started saying my name like, "Tyler, Tyler, wait," but I couldn't even speak. Literally, no words would come out. I just stood there at the door looking at them, and Josh. Josh had the nerve to say, "Dude, I'm sorry. It wasn't what we wanted," and I exploded. I yelled at them that they had 1 hour to get all their stuff out of my apartment because, yeah, the lease was in my name because Josh had horrible credit and didn't qualify, and I told them that if in 1 hour they weren't out, I was going to throw all their belongings into the street and call the police. Sarah tried to follow me when I left the room, wrapped in the sheet and crying, saying we could talk about it, that it had been a mistake, that she loved me, but I told her to never speak to me again in her life, and I left the apartment before doing something I'd regret. I went to a hotel that night, a horrible Motel 6 that cost like $50, and stayed there lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what had happened, how it had gotten to this point, what I had done wrong. I went back to the apartment the next day, and Josh had already taken all his stuff out. He'd left the keys on the kitchen table with a note that said, "I'm sorry, bro. There's no excuse for what I did." But I didn't even read it completely, threw it in the trash. Sarah called me like 100 times that week, sent me endless messages, showed up at my work twice until security had to escort her out. But I didn't want to know anything, absolutely anything about her or Josh or anyone from the friend group we had in common. The truth is, I felt so betrayed, so humiliated, that I basically decided to disappear from that city. I changed my phone number, deleted all my social media, requested a transfer at work that took me back to my home state where my family lived, and basically started from scratch. It was hard, very hard, because I was leaving behind not just Sarah and Josh, but all my friends, my routine, my entire life. But I couldn't stay there, where every corner reminded me of what had happened. My sister Katie was incredible through all of that. She lived near where I moved, and basically forced me to socialize, to go out, not to stay locked in my new apartment processing the betrayal on infinite loop. Like 2 years passed before I really started to feel like myself again, before I could think about Sarah or Josh without getting a knot in my stomach. I met Melissa at a work networking event. She's a graphic designer, and I don't know how to explain it. She's like everything opposite to Sarah. She's honest to the point of being brutally direct sometimes. She's loyal, she's genuine, and from the beginning she made it clear to me that she hated mind games and drama. We started dating casually at first. I was super cautious because obviously I had trust issues the size of Everest, but she was patient with me, let me go at my own pace. And eventually I realized that this was different, completely different from what I'd had with Sarah. We got engaged like 6 months ago. It was super simple, nothing elaborate, just the way we both like it. And I decided it was time to get back on social media because enough time had passed, and I wanted to share my happiness with people who mattered to me. I posted a photo of us with the ring, wrote something cheesy about having found my person, and I thought that was it, that it was just a normal life update. But turns out Sarah still had ways of monitoring what I was doing, probably through mutual friends or something. Because literally, 2 days after posting that photo, I received a message request on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. It was Sarah. The message said, "Tyler, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something important. Please don't block me. It's about something that happened years ago and that you need to know." And I thought, seriously? After 5 years, you decide to contact me right when I post that I'm getting married? I blocked her immediately, didn't even respond, and thought that was the end of it. But then messages started coming from fake accounts, some pretending to be other people, others clearly created just to contact me, and all with the same message from Sarah begging me to give her 5 minutes to talk. She also started writing to Melissa, which was super awkward, telling her she needed to talk to me about something urgent from our past. Melissa asked me what was up with my psycho ex, and I told her the whole story of the betrayal because up to that point I'd only given her a summarized version, and she said we should block everything and completely ignore Sarah because obviously she just wanted to create drama in my life again. That's what we did. We blocked like 10 different accounts, and for a few weeks everything was quiet until I got a call from Katie. My sister sounded weird, like nervous, and she told me she needed to tell me something that had just happened. Sarah had contacted her, had found her phone number who knows how, and had told her something that, according to Katie, I needed to hear, even though it was horrible. Katie took a deep breath and told me, "Tyler, Sarah says you have a son. A 5-year-old boy she never told you existed." And I laughed, literally laughed, because I thought it was Sarah's most ridiculous and desperate attempt to get back into my life, like she was already making up imaginary children to get my attention. But Katie wasn't laughing. She said that Sarah had sent her photos of the boy, and that, "Tyler, I don't know how to tell you this, but the boy looks exactly like you when you were little. It's uncanny." I told Katie to send me the photos just to prove this was crazy, and when I saw them on my phone, I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water over me. This boy who was supposedly my son, had my same nose, my same eyes, even the shape of his face was like looking at photos of me from childhood. I stood there staring at the images, unable to process what I was seeing, and Melissa, who was next to me, asked what was wrong, and when I showed her the photos, she said, "Oh my God, Tyler, that kid is definitely yours." I called Katie back and told her I needed Sarah's number, that I needed answers now. But Katie told me no, not to contact her directly, that this could be a trap or manipulation, and that I needed to handle this with a lawyer first. She was right. I was so upset I probably would have done or said something stupid. I hired a lawyer the next day, a guy specialized in family law, who cost me a fortune, but who basically told me that if this was real, if I really had a son who had been hidden from me for 5 years, I had rights, legal rights that could be enforced. My lawyer sent Sarah a letter demanding proof of paternity, demanding explanations, and basically telling her that if this was real, there would be legal consequences for hiding my son from me all this time. Sarah responded through her own lawyer with more photos of the boy, with his birth certificate where the father was listed as unknown, and with a letter explaining that she wasn't sure who the father was when he was born because, and this blew my mind, because apparently Josh and I had been with her during the same time period. That made me feel sick, absolutely sick, because it meant that while she was with me officially, she was also with Josh, and who knows how many other people. My lawyer arranged a paternity test, one of those official ones used in court, and the next few weeks were the longest of my life waiting for the results. Melissa was incredible through all of this. She told me that no matter what happened, no matter if the kid was mine or not, she was with me, and we were going to figure it out together. When the results came and I saw that 99.9% probability that I was the biological father, I don't know what I felt exactly. It was like a mix of validation because it wasn't a trap from Sarah, but also absolute terror because what the hell am I supposed to do with this? My lawyer explained that I had parental rights, that I could sue for shared custody, for visits, and that I would also have to pay child support, which was fair. I mean, he's my son. But the situation got complicated when Sarah told me that Josh had been raising the boy. Ethan was the boy's name. As if he were his own, all this time. Josh, apparently, believed he was the father, lived with Sarah and Ethan, and legally I had no rights yet because I wasn't on the birth certificate. Then came another plot twist that made everything even more complicated. Turns out Josh had recently had medical studies for other reasons, and they discovered he was sterile, that he probably always had been, and that's why Sarah panicked and decided to contact me. She knew that if Josh found out Ethan wasn't biologically his, he might leave, and she needed my child support. She needed me to assume financial responsibility for a child she had deliberately hidden for 5 years. My lawyer told me this worked in my favor, that we could use this to demand visitation rights, time with my son, but when we proposed it to Sarah and Josh, they went crazy. Josh called me directly, ignoring the lawyers and everything, and told me that I had no right to enter Ethan's life just because we shared DNA, that he had been that boy's father since he was born, that he was the one who got up at night when he cried, that he took him to school, that he was his dad in all the ways that mattered. And I understood that. I understood it completely. But I also felt this rage burning in my chest because none of this was my fault. I never chose not to be present. I never chose to miss the first 5 years of my son's life that was stolen from me by Sarah and circumstances, and now Josh wanted me to just disappear again to keep his fake family intact. I told him no, that I was going to meet my son, that I was going to be part of his life, and that if we wanted to resolve this amicably we could, but that I wasn't backing down. Josh hung up after yelling at me that I was a selfish person who was only going to confuse and hurt Ethan. My lawyer arranged an in-person meeting, neutral, in his office with Sarah, Josh, their lawyers, and us. It was horrible, like one of the most tense experiences of my life. Sarah looked completely different from how I remembered her, older, more tired, and Josh basically didn't look me in the eye the entire meeting. We started talking about terms, about how we were going to handle this, and Sarah proposed that I could have limited visits, like once a month, in secret without telling Ethan who I really was, and in exchange I would pay child support. And I said no, absolutely not, that I wasn't going to be a secret stranger in my son's life, that if I was going to be part of his life, I was going to be for real, that he deserved to know the truth. Josh said the truth would destroy Ethan, that the boy saw him as his father, and that telling him something different would be traumatic and confusing. My lawyer intervened and explained that eventually Ethan was going to discover the truth one way or another, that it was better to be honest now than to let him find out accidentally or traumatically later. The negotiations continued for months, literally months of back and forth, tense meetings, furious emails, legal threats from both sides. Josh kept insisting that I had no moral right to enter Ethan's life. Sarah kept trying to limit my access while maximizing the money she could get from me, and I just wanted to meet my son. Finally, we reached an agreement. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I would have supervised visits initially, every 2 weeks for a couple of hours, in a neutral place like a park or public place, and eventually, if things went well, the visits could be extended and stop being supervised. I would pay child support, which was never an issue for me, and Ethan would be told the truth in an age-appropriate way, that I was his biological father and that I wanted to meet him. The first meeting was last week, at a park near where Sarah lives, and she and Josh were there watching from a bench at a distance while I approached this little boy playing on the swings. I had bought him a gift, a stuffed dinosaur, because Katie told me he loved dinosaurs. And when I approached and introduced myself, as Tyler, Ethan looked at me with these eyes that were exactly like mine and asked if I was his other dad. I nodded and gave him the dinosaur, and he hugged it and started asking me random 5-year-old kid questions, like what my favorite color was, and if I liked dinosaurs, and if I had pets. We spent 2 hours together that day, playing on the swings, walking through the park, and every minute was precious and painful at the same time, because I was thinking about everything I had missed. His first words, his first steps, 5 entire years I'm never going to get back. Melissa came with me to some visits, with Sarah's permission, and Ethan really liked her. Asked if she was going to be his other mom, and Melissa told him she hoped they could be friends for now. The visits have been getting better. Ethan doesn't get nervous anymore when he sees me. He runs toward me when I arrive and tells me about his week in preschool or about the TV shows he's watching. Josh still doesn't talk to me, directly. Sarah is cordial but distant, and I'm trying not to think too much about all the lost time and focus on building something with Ethan now. Yesterday, Ethan asked me if I was going to his birthday next month, and I looked at Sarah, who was nearby, and she sighed and said, yes, that I could go. We're also planning the wedding for next year, and we've already decided that Ethan is going to be there. He's going to be part of the ceremony somehow, because even though this is complicated and weird and nothing like I imagined it, he's my son, and he deserves to be included in my life. I don't know how all of this is going to end, if eventually Josh and I will be able to be in the same room without all this horrible tension, if Sarah and I will be able to co-parent functionally, or if Ethan is going to grow up resenting me for having entered his life in such a chaotic way. What I do know is that I'm not going to give up, that I'm going to keep showing up to every visit, that I'm going to be the best father I can be with the circumstances I have, and that maybe, eventually, this will feel less like a battle and more like a family, even if it's a super weird and complicated one.